A light drizzle glazed the glass walls of O'Hare International Airport as a quiet tension filled the air. People dragged suitcases, eyes tired, minds on flights and family. No one noticed the man stepping through the automatic doors. Tall, dark-skinned, dressed in a faded olive jacket and black slacks. His name was Ibrahim Traoré, but he moved like someone used to being unseen. There was no security team, no flag, no badge pinned to his chest. Just a small canvas bag and calm eyes that had seen too much. Right behind him walked Keanu Reeves. Head down, hoodie on. His backpack clung to his shoulder, and he carried a slim book. He didn't need to be noticed. He preferred not to be. To most, he was just another scruffy traveler. But the two had landed together, returning from a private UN summit in Geneva on ethical policing. Ibrahim had spoken not just with facts, but with wounds. Keanu, with conscience. Together, they had shaken a few rooms. But now, they were in a different kind of room. One that didn't care who you were, just what you looked like. They had 90 minutes before their next flight. Keanu leaned over, speaking softly. Enough time to grab a bad coffee. Ibrahim smiled gently, maybe even a warm welcome. But that welcome never came. Two TSA officers leaned against a pillar up ahead. One was older, his face sharp with suspicion. The other, younger, looked more nervous than dangerous. The older one squinted. "You see that guy?" he asked his partner. "Tall, black, olive jacket, alone. Matches the report." The younger one hesitated. "He's just walking." The older man, Peterson, smirked. "Exactly. Too calm. That's the giveaway." Keanu's footsteps slowed. Something in the air shifted. He could feel it. Peterson and Hayes moved forward, cutting across passengers. Ibrahim kept walking, unaware, or maybe just unwilling to give that stare any power. Then came the bark. "Sir, stop right there." Ibrahim stopped, turned calmly. "Is there a problem, officer?" Peterson stepped closer than necessary. "Let's see some ID." His voice wasn't asking. It was pressing. Keanu watched from a few feet behind, his pulse tightening. He didn't speak yet. He just observed. Ibrahim remained still. "Under what grounds?" he asked, his tone controlled. "You match a report," Peterson shot back. "Security check." Hayes looked unsure. This man didn't look nervous. He looked steady. But Peterson had already made his judgment. Keanu took one step closer. Not dramatic, just enough to be seen. "Officers," he said quietly. "He's with me." Peterson turned, eyes narrowed. "And who are you?" Keanu reached into his jacket slowly, showing a black folio. UN credentials, name, title, photo, co-chair of the Ethics and Policing Initiative. Peterson didn't even glance. "This isn't Switzerland," he snapped. "You don't get to tell us how to do security here." The moment froze. Ibrahim stood silent. Keanu's voice dropped lower. "I strongly suggest you verify before you make this mistake bigger." Peterson ignored him. "You speak English?" he asked Ibrahim, loud and slow. "I speak 6 languages." Ibrahim replied softly. "Which one would you like to be rude in?" Hayes blinked. Peterson's hand went to his cuffs. Keanu didn't yell. "Don't do this," he said. "I already did." The first cuff clicked shut. Keanu's eyes darkened, not with rage, but with certainty. The second cuff closed. Ibrahim didn't resist. He just stood taller, as if bracing for a weight he knew too well. The crowd didn't know who he was. Not yet. But they knew what they were watching. And Keanu? He wasn't going to let this pass. Passengers started slowing down. Conversations dimmed. A few people stared, unsure if they should record or walk away. Keanu stepped forward, closer to Peterson, but didn't raise his voice. "You just handcuffed a UN delegate, a man protected under international protocol. Are you absolutely sure you want to continue?" Peterson gave a dry chuckle. "He's not above the law. I don't care who he's with." Keanu held up his phone, unlocking a secure UN database. Check it yourself. President Ibrahim Traoré, Head of State, Burkina Faso. Diplomatic clearance, official travel manifest, verified by both the UN and U.S. State Department. Hayes leaned over to peek. His expression shifted, but Peterson's pride had taken the wheel. He has no badge, no flag. Could be anybody. He jerked Ibrahim toward the wall. The bag slipped off Ibrahim's shoulder and hit the ground with a soft thud. The zipper gave way, revealing a blue folder with the UN emblem. A lanyard slipped out with an ID that read, President Ibrahim Traoré, in bold. Keanu didn't say a word. He bent down, picked up the folder, and held it up. One last off-ramp for Peterson. Peterson didn't take it. Nice prop, he muttered. You people always have a story. Keanu's jaw tightened. His words sliced through the thick air. You've just unlawfully detained a sitting head of state, assaulted him, ignored verified credentials. You're stacking federal violations like poker chips. And when this explodes, it won't be me answering calls from Washington. It'll be you. Hayes looked rattled. Peterson, maybe we should... He's not going anywhere, Peterson snapped. Just then, a man in a business suit stepped forward. He wore an airport ID badge and looked uncomfortable. Officers, he said cautiously, pointing to the ID and lanyard. I really think you need to... Sir, step back, Peterson barked. That was it. Keanu stepped forward. For the first time, his voice rose. Not loud, but sharp. Enough. Everything paused. The terminal, the crowd, even the background announcements. Everyone was watching now. Keanu turned to Ibrahim. Are you okay? Ibrahim looked him in the eye. Not yet. Keanu nodded and faced Peterson again. You've been warned. You were shown the truth. Now you're going to face the consequences. At that moment, a radio crackled. A voice from dispatch confirmed. Diplomatic credentials verified. Do not detain. Repeat, do not detain. Federal protection in place. Hayes turned pale. Peterson stood still, jaw clenched. Keanu leaned in. Take them off. Or I make a single call. And this becomes bigger than your badge can handle. Hayes reached for the cuffs. His hands trembled. The first click as the cuff opened felt louder than a gunshot. The second followed. Soft, but heavy. Ibrahim didn't rub his wrists. He didn't speak. He just stood taller. The marks on his skin were fading, but the message in his eyes was burning. Peterson tried to save face. Let's not be dramatic. Ibrahim turned slowly, voice calm but cutting. You said you people, without even flinching. That's not drama. That's who you are. Hayes looked at the open cuffs in his hand. The radio on his shoulder buzzed again, but he didn't touch it. Keanu stepped forward, holding the lanyard and documents. You ignored the law. You dismissed proof. You assaulted dignity. And for what? Silence. Then Ibrahim spoke, voice steady. I have walked through war zones. I have sat between men who hated each other enough to burn countries down. And yet here, I was treated like a threat. For being calm. For being unknown. For being black. Around them, people had stopped pretending not to watch. Some held phones. Others stood frozen. The entire terminal was a witness now. I wonder, Ibrahim added, if I had shouted or resisted, how easily you would have justified what came next. He turned to Keanu. This is what silent resistance looks like. Keanu nodded. Not as a celebrity, not as a savior, as a witness. And just then, the sound of boots echoed across the terminal. The system had been alerted. And it was coming. The arrival was quiet, but the tension it carried was deafening. Lieutenant David Miller walked with sharp, deliberate steps, flanked by two officers in full uniform. His presence didn't demand silence. It created it. He scanned the scene, taking in the crowd, the open cuffs, the strained posture of Ibrahim, and Keanu Reeves standing like a shadow beside him. Without needing introductions, he turned toward Peterson and Hayes. "Report," he said, his tone flat and final. Peterson stumbled through his words. "He matched the description, sir. Refused to cooperate. We, ID?" Miller interrupted. Peterson hesitated, glanced at the folder in Keanu's hand, then muttered, "Didn't have any visible credentials at first." Keanu didn't wait. He stepped forward, holding out the UN dossier and the diplomatic manifest on his tablet. These were shown, twice. Verified credentials, ignored twice. Miller took the documents, scanned them, then slowly looked at Ibrahim. "Sir, may I have your name?" Ibrahim lifted his eyes. "President Ibrahim Traoré, head of state, Burkina Faso. No theatrics, no anger, just truth, presented like stone, undeniable and solid." Miller paused. No disbelief, no challenge, just a quiet, grave nod. Then he turned to Peterson and Hayes. "Do you two have any idea who you just put in handcuffs?" Peterson looked down. Hayes's throat bobbed, his voice barely a whisper. We were following the report." Miller's tone dropped colder. "That report was never meant to be an excuse for blind profiling." Then louder, firmer. "Surrender your badges. Weapons, radios, now." Neither officer moved. Then Keanu, without raising his voice, simply said, "Do it." That was enough. Hayes unclipped his badge first. Peterson followed, reluctantly, as if every click of his gear stripped a piece of his authority. Radios crackled as they were handed off. The two were escorted away, not like criminals, but like men who had crossed a line too many times and finally got caught. Ibrahim watched them go, not with pride, not with triumph. Just quiet certainty. The storm hadn't ended, but it had been recognized. Miller turned back to him. "Mr. President, on behalf of this department, I offer our sincerest apologies." Ibrahim's voice was soft. "Apologies don't change systems, but accountability begins there." Keanu placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Let's make sure it doesn't end here." Behind them, whispers started moving through the crowd. Someone said, "He's a president." Another murmured, "That's Keanu Reeves." But neither man turned. They didn't need the attention. The damage was done. But now, so was the silence. The terminal started breathing again, slowly returning to motion. But the energy had shifted. No one would forget what they saw. As Keanu and Ibrahim walked side by side toward their gate, a young black janitor stood frozen, mop in hand. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He just looked Ibrahim in the eyes. And in that 1 second, everything was exchanged. Pain, dignity, recognition. Keanu saw it too. This wasn't about headlines. This was about truth finally being seen. By morning, the footage was no longer just security tape. It was evidence. Raw, uncut, time-stamped, and transmitted straight to Washington. Within hours, it hit the desks of the Department of Justice, the State Department, and the FBI's Civil Rights Division. Every gesture, every ignored warning, every click of the cuffs was documented and dissected. There was no editing, no convenient misunderstanding to hide behind. This wasn't just about two officers. This was about a pattern, the kind that thrives when no one is watching. Except this time, someone was. Peterson's record unraveled first. Years of complaints quietly closed. Patterns of targeting Black and Latino travelers. Reports labeled as unsubstantiated suddenly didn't look so unsubstantiated anymore. Hayes, though newer, wasn't spared either. His failure wasn't action. It was silence. A silence that echoed the kind that allows injustice to breathe. But what shook the system most wasn't the backlash. It was the calm. Ibrahim didn't storm the media. He didn't demand punishment. Instead, he returned to Washington, sat across from senators, diplomats, and law enforcement leaders. and said one thing: justice that responds only to status is not justice. It's controlled empathy. He didn't speak about himself. He spoke about every student, worker, and parent who didn't have a camera or a celebrity beside them. He didn't want apologies. He wanted structure, policy, evidence. He demanded that the system stop depending on luck or fame to protect the innocent. Meanwhile, Keanu stayed out of the spotlight. No interviews, no hashtags. He filed a full affidavit, testified behind closed doors, and told them what most celebrities never admit. This wasn't a mistake. It was a design. And that design almost went unnoticed, until it landed on someone the system couldn't ignore. And then, one quiet night, he posted a message online. No images, just these words. If what happened to Ibrahim made you angry, good. Let it make you act. Learn your rights. Speak up. Don't just be a witness. Be the reason someone walks away with dignity instead of trauma. That single post went viral, not because it was loud, but because it was true. At the UN headquarters in New York, 3 weeks later, sunlight stretched across a quiet conference room where Ibrahim and Keanu sat with a panel of reform advocates. No flashing cameras, just progress. Peterson and Hayes had been officially dismissed and charged. Several precincts had begun re-evaluating racial profiling. Cultural sensitivity training, once ignored, was now mandatory in 5 major cities. But Ibrahim wasn't celebrating. He sat forward, voice low but steady. I will not be remembered as the president who was handcuffed. That is not my story. My story is that I survived it. And because I did, I must speak for those who cannot. My name gave me visibility, but it should not take a title to earn humanity. Keanu sat beside him, hands folded, listening like the rest of the room. When Ibrahim finished, Keanu finally looked up and said, I've played heroes all my life, but I've never seen more courage than refusing to scream when the world is trying to silence you. And then he added, with that same quiet certainty, the silence of one man almost erased him. The voice of another saved him. If you saw what happened to Ibrahim and felt angry, good. Let that anger become something more. Learn your rights. Speak up. Don't just be a witness. Be the reason someone walks away with dignity instead of trauma. If you've ever seen someone judged or mistreated for how they look, what did you do? Were you silent? Did you step in? Would you act differently now? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story moved you, inspired you, or opened your eyes, leave a comment that says, I won't look away. Together, let's not just watch stories of justice. Let's live them. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest sound we leave behind.